Childhood emotional neglect, also known as CEN. Just learned about it in a book that I just read by Janice Webb. It's called Running on Empty. I thought maybe it would help me more with my relationships. And then I just came to find out there was a whole new realm of child emotional neglect. And so I didn't quite understand what it was. I was like, okay, what did I get myself into? But once I started getting in deep, man, I could deeply identify with it. And it really hit me in a spot that I think would help a lot of you guys out. Because I think she talks about, those that were raised in childhood emotional neglect were taught that their feelings don't matter. When you grow up and you feel a certain way and your parents like, no, you can't feel that way, shut up, your feelings don't matter, stop. And then what do? You stop crying or you stop doing whatever it is, and you fall in place. And to me, I just thought that was normal for a long time. I was like, isn't that the way it normally goes? You kind of ignore your kids' feelings and you just kind of move on, tough it out, move it. And what Webb was talking about was actually that's not how it's supposed to go. You're actually supposed to talk about children's feelings and talk to them and see how they're feeling and give them words and emotional vocabulary like sadness and regret and anger and frustration. I never really had any of those conversations with my parents. They never really taught me about the different types of emotions and the different kinds of feelings. And so I just kind of learned to stuff my feelings down and just kind of say, well, my feelings don't matter. Stuff my feelings down, get the job done. And for many years, that's pretty much worked. I think I've learned how to balance it out better over the years as I've gotten older. I haven't perfected it by any means, but it's been good to help me with reflecting with my children. And she came up with a bunch of examples like, have you ever visited your parents' place and got really frustrated and you didn't even know what was missing? You didn't even know what wasn't there, but you felt like something was empty. And she goes, yeah, that's a lot of that childhood emotional neglect. That's that emotional stuff that you never got taught as a kid. And you wanted to learn about it, but you didn't learn about it. And so there's this little anger and frustration you just have through your parents. But once again, you don't know what it is. And so you've always desired that emotional feeling and that craving that you never fully got taught. And so you're frustrated at your parents. But here's the thing, I don't want you to be frustrated at your parents because your parents themselves, they didn't know what all that emotional stuff was because they never got raised to be emotionally aware. They never got taught emotions or how to talk about them or how to deal with them or express them. So if they didn't have it, how could they give it to you? How could they pass it on? So they grew up with childhood emotional neglect and they passed most of that on to you. Now, I'm assuming they probably did a better job than their parents to try and be closer to you and connect more with you, but they just didn't have it built into them. They just weren't taught. That's one of the things we're meant to be passed on from adults to children is how to deal with your emotions and feelings. And so it's a lot of stuff just taken in deep that you're trying to figure out. And I think the key thing that people face as an adult that comes from childhood emotional neglect is saying, my feelings don't matter. When, people ask you, what do you think? Some people are literally afraid to say what they think about anything because their feelings, their thoughts don't matter. And they just kind of go with the flow because that's all they've been taught their whole life. And I don't want that for any of you. So one of the key things, because I know a lot of you have children out there and I'm running out of time, is how do you emotionally connect with your kids? One, you could read the book. This is one of the few books I'm like, you really need to read this. If you're completely like, whoa, there's another level of emotional connection stuff. What are you talking about? Definitely want to read the book. I'll definitely put it in the comments. I really think that the key number one is giving your children emotional words. There's more than just good and bad. There's sad, there's frustrated, there's angry, there's depression, there's all these different things other than just good and bad that we can discuss. And we need to teach this to our children. And we need to say, I'm not emotionally in a good place to make a good decision right now. That's why I'm going to take a break and give you space so I can come back when I'm more emotionally stable. Those type of conversations. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that with a 5-year-old versus a 14-year-old. But those are things we need to work on, man. And so I could talk literally for days about all the amazing stories that Webb wrote in this book. But instead, man, I just want you guys to understand that in a sense, a lot of us have experienced childhood emotional neglect. And we obviously don't want to pass that on to our kids. And so one way we could do that is by learning about it. You can accomplish anything you want as long as you're willing to sacrifice and put in the work. I believe in you. Go get them.